Hello there, and welcome to Echoes of the Imperium. I'm truly glad you've arrived. Maybe it's been a long day, or maybe you're the kind of soul who prefers to drift into sleep with thoughts of distant stars and ancient cosmic secrets instead of counting sheep. Either way, tonight's journey belongs to you. You don't need to do anything now, just rest. Let your mind grow quiet, your breath steady, and your body feel lighter, as if even the pull of gravity has begun to fade away. I remember the moment the fractures began, not as a soldier or a scholar, but as a witness, an unwilling chronicler of an event so vast that even now, as I recount it into the recorder's dim red glow, my throat tightens as if the air itself were thick with psychic static. For decades we had heard rumors of experiments among the inquisitorial Ordos Chronos, whispered projects buried deeper than even the Officio Assassinorum's darkest vaults. And yet none of us believed they would truly attempt to unravel the silent laws of the immaterium, until the day the sky cracked like porcelain under a hammer. It began with a tremor in the Astronomicon, a faint flicker that rippled through the warp lanes like a heartbeat skipping a beat. And I, stationed aboard the archive ship Tabula Obscura, felt the light of the Emperor's beacon shudder for the first time in living memory. Astropaths screamed without warning, clutching their skulls, blood trickling from their ears as if something enormous had leaned its weight against the fabric of the warp and pressed. The ship's lumen strips dimmed to a mournful copper glow, and a reek of ozone filled the vents as the Geller field flexed in distress, its surface shimmering like heated glass. I felt the vibration through the soles of my boots, not violent but deep, a resonance, like the universe humming a note far below the threshold of sanity. Then came the voice, not heard but felt, the whisper of possibility, a pressure behind the eyes that tugged at something ancient, primal, and forbidden. The tech priests around me fell into their binary prayers, metal fingers twitching as they tried to interpret the flood of noospheric data. But there were no precedents, no patterns, no statistical anchors in any Mars-forged archive to describe what we were witnessing. The Inquisitor at my side, a woman of iron discipline whose name I still dare not speak, gripped the railing so hard her gauntlet squealed. "The barrier has been probed," she muttered, more to herself than to any of us. "Not breached. Not yet. Reality is testing itself." The next moments, minutes, hours, are blurred in my memory, smeared into a surreal tapestry by fear and the warp's distortion of perception. But I remember the first tear forming, a hairline crack in void space, thin as a spider's thread, glowing with colors that hurt to look at and yet compelled the gaze like a predatory lure. The sundered edge flickered, split, widened, and then blossomed outward into a wound in the universe. Through the breach we saw shapes, not Xenos, not demons, not the expected horrors of the immaterium. What we saw was worse, a reflection. A second tabula obscura, its hull scorched by battle damage we had not yet taken, drifting at the same angle, as if mimicking us with a half-second delay. But then the delay vanished, and the ship aligned perfectly with our movements, like a mirror catching up to its own reflection. I stared, throat dry, as figures moved within its observation decks. Figures who looked like us, moved like us, but reacted with a hesitation that betrayed comprehension rather than synchronicity. A dozen theories flashed through my mind: illusion, temporal echo, warp hallucination. But then one of the mirrored crew stepped closer to their window, lifting a hand in the same moment I lifted mine, yet not as an echo. Their expression was one of horror, recognition, and an attempt at warning. They mouthed words I couldn't hear, but I could read the lips well enough. "Do not open the gate." The Inquisitor barked orders. Vox channels erupted with static-laced command chains, and the ship shifted into combat readiness, despite none of us understanding the nature of the threat. But the fracture was still widening, pulsing like a living wound, and the mirrored ship's alarms visibly flared red behind its glass panes. They were afraid of us or of something behind us I could not tell. And that was the moment I realized the truth. They believed we had caused the tear. The machine priests confirmed the impossible moments later. "The breach originates on our side," a tech adept droned, voice trembling despite his augmentations. No foreign signal. No external trigger. "This is a unilateral incision." The Inquisitor swore, something I had never heard her do, and whispered, "Someone has cut through reality to find what lies beyond." The mirrored ship began to flicker, distorting, its crew's movements stuttering like broken frames in a corrupted vid slate. Their hull began to twist, folding inward as if collapsing under forces we could not detect. One crew member, a version of myself I realized with a cold jolt, pressed against the window in desperation, his skin peeling as though gravity itself had betrayed him. His face contorted into a final plea, his eyes hollow with unspeakable knowledge. Then he dissolved, body atomized into shimmering fragments that blew backward into the void. A second later, their entire ship imploded, vanishing without light or debris, as if it had never existed at all. The tear sealed itself with a thunderclap that did not echo through space but through our minds. Every astropath aboard fell unconscious at once. The warp went eerily silent. It was as though the universe had drawn a deep breath and held it. Hours later, after the emergency protocols stabilized and the ship drifted under auxiliary control, the Inquisitor summoned me alone. Her voice was hushed, reverent, terrified. She told me what the Ordo's Kronos had been attempting, what no human hand should ever have dared to tamper with. They sought to test the boundaries between timelines, to chart the echo patterns of alternate realities, to determine whether humanity's fate was immutable, or if there existed other paths, brighter ones, darker ones, or paths where the Emperor never took the Golden Throne. But what they had found, she said, was not alternate timelines governed by the laws of causality. It was other universes entirely, separated by boundaries thinner than a psyker's whisper. Each one different, each one infinite, each one vulnerable. A multiverse, she said with a whisper, is not a frontier. It is a battlefield with no walls. And though she tried to hide it, I saw the fevered gleam in her eye, a hunger, a terror, an understanding that would spread through the High Lords like wildfire. For if the Imperium could breach other universes, the Imperium could conquer other universes. And if the Imperium could conquer them, so could its enemies. That night, as I drifted in my cot, unable to sleep, I felt the universe trembling like a wounded beast. Not from the tear itself, but from the thought that the Imperium, unyielding, wrathful, desperate, now knew there was more to wage war upon than our own dying galaxy. The question was no longer whether we could reach the multiverse. It was whether we could survive what would come crawling out to reach us. I did not expect the Imperium to move so quickly, nor did I expect to be conscripted into the first council convened after the breach. But fate, or perhaps the warp's cruel humor, pulled me into the center of the storm. Within 40 hours of the fracture's collapse, the tabula obscura was diverted to the segmentum solar under silent coded orders. And the moment our docking clamps sealed inside the High Terra Fleet anchorage, a tension settled over the crew like ash after a wildfire. Soldiers walked with rigid vigilance. Tech priests chanted louder than usual, and even servitors seemed to twitch in paranoid rhythms, as if every machine spirit felt the razor edge of new and terrible knowledge slicing through the noosphere. I was escorted through the golden throat of the anchorage by black-armored custodes, their presence so overwhelming I could feel my pulse sinking to the hum of their auramite plate. None of them spoke, but I could sense the unspoken truth. The Emperor himself had felt the tear. The council chamber we entered was vast, lit only by recessed lumen globes shaped like burning suns, each one casting downward beams that converged on the center table where inquisitors, Lord Admirals, Mechanicus Magi, and one hooded representative of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica were waiting. Their faces were masks of discipline, yet I could see it, the subtle dilation of pupils, the shallow breathing, the faint twitch of fingers tapping data slates, signs of minds struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what had been discovered. My inquisitor nodded toward a seat, and I obeyed, feeling painfully small as Auspex screens projected the logs, readings, and distorted images of the mirrored ship we had witnessed. No one spoke at first. The room vibrated with a suffocating silence, one filled with implication and dread. Then, a Magos with half his skull replaced by a whirring crystalline augmetic leaned forward and declared what we all feared. The fracture was not a warp anomaly. It was a slit cut across the strata of existence itself. He gestured, and a hololithic model sprang up. Layers of dimensional fields like thin sheets of gold leaf stacked atop one another, stretching endlessly. A red line appeared, crossing from one layer into another. This was not an accident, he continued. It was a targeted incision. Something found our reality and sliced into it as one would cut parchment. The Lord Admiral slammed a fist against the table. You are suggesting a non-Imperial force initiated the breach? The Mechanicus emissary's optics dilated with static. Negative. Data indicates the incision matched our own experimental resonance signatures, only magnified by factors we cannot replicate. This sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. Because the implication sat like a mine beneath our feet, the Ordos Chronos had theorized about dimensional bleeding. But they had never possessed the capability to perform a full incision, and yet the breach bore their signature, which meant that somewhere, some version of us had succeeded long before we had. The hooded psyker spoke next, their voice strained and brittle. Whatever made the incision, it did not do so alone. There was pressure, immeasurable psychic pressure from beyond. Something pushed through as the cut opened. Cold sweat prickled my spine. My Inquisitor leaned forward, her voice a whisper sharp as a monomolecular blade. Survivors? The psychers shook their head. No entities crossed into our realm, but fragments of thought did. Whispers, reflections, fears not our own. They lifted a trembling hand. I heard myself die 1,000 times. The chamber descended into a murmur of alarm. The possibility of a multiverse meant infinite Imperiums, some stronger, some weaker, some damned beyond comprehension, and infinite enemies. A stronger chaos, a subtler Xenos threat, a humanity that failed in ways we had yet to imagine. But it was the Grand Provost Marshal who finally asked the question that threatened to split the Imperium's resolve. If infinite universes exist, then infinite threats exist. What if one of them has already seen us? What if one of them has already begun preparing for war? The silence that followed was suffocating. Every eye turned to the hololithic projection still floating above the table. A model of universes stacked like brittle panes of stained glass, each vibrating with invisible motion. The inquisitorial seal pulsed red. There must be a response, my Inquisitor said. Her voice was firm now, sharpened into certainty by fear. If the incision originated from another reality aligned with our signature, then it stands to reason their Imperium may already be aware of us. We must assume they know we exist, and that they are assessing whether we are a threat. The Lord Admiral nodded slowly, fingers drumming his scorched gauntlet. In the Imperium, I know, he muttered, assessment invariably leads to eradication. That grim truth settled over us like a burial shroud. After long debate, punctuated by shouted arguments and steely glares, the High Council drafted a decree, not yet law, but heavy with the weight of inevitability, Operation Gatefall. A preemptive investigation, reconnaissance, and if necessary, the first strike against any hostile universes in proximity to ours. The Mechanicus proposed a device, an abominable hybrid of warp engine, temporal stabilizer, and mirrored dimensional oscillator that could reopen the breach in a controlled manner. They called it the Convergence Lumen, though the name felt too clean, too ceremonial for something that hummed with forbidden power. My Inquisitor volunteered our ship to accompany the First Fleet Task Force. I didn't know whether to feel honored or terrified. Perhaps both. But something else happened before the Council adjourned. Something none of us could ignore. The chamber's geomantic shields flickered, just for an instant. But every psyker gasped as if stabbed. The hooded figure collapsed to their knees, hands clamped around their skull. Something is pressing against the veil, they shrieked. Something vast, cold, familiar. The hololithic model spasmed. The layered universes folded, twisted, distorted. A ripple of interference shot through the projectors. And then, a single icon appeared, pulsing with ghostly red. A signal from beyond our universe. At first it looked like raw data. Then distortions cohered, vox patterns formed, and the blood drained from every face in the room. It was a message, a warning, a declaration. 6 words, spoken in a voice I recognized with horrifying clarity, because it was my own voice. Do not open the gate. We failed. The message ended abruptly, consumed by static that howled like wolves in the warp. Then the projection went dark. The lights flickered, and something unseen scraped along the edge of the chamber's reality like claws testing the strength of the walls. The council erupted in panic. Orders were shouted. Custodians drew their guardian spears, forming a ring around us. My heart hammered as the walls vibrated with a low, resonant groan. Not a sound, but a pressure, like the breath of some colossal, unseen predator leaning close enough to fog the glass between universes. And then it passed. The tremor died. The light steadied. Reality settled back into place with a sigh too quiet for comfort. But the message remained etched in our minds. Another version of us had tried to warn us. Another Imperium had already fallen. Another me had died delivering that warning. And yet, despite the fear that thickened the air like smoke, the Imperium's response was not retreat. It was resolve, determination sharpened by desperation. Because the Imperium has never been a creature of caution. It is a creature of conquest. And if infinite universes exist, then infinite wars await. Our fleet would be the first to cross the threshold. And I would bear witness, again and again, across realities, until one of us survived. I had expected the preparations for Operation Gatefall to take months, perhaps years. But the Imperium, terrified, invigorated, and ravenous for dominance, does not hesitate when confronted with an unknown threat. Within 12 days, the Convergence Lumen was installed aboard the Eternum Vigil, a grand cruiser retrofitted into a dimensional spearhead. Its kilometer-long spine reinforced with arcane machinery that pulsed with warp light like veins carrying molten gold. And as I stepped aboard with the Inquisitor and her retinue, I felt reality bending in subtle ways around the vessel, the deck plates humming at a pitch just below hearing, the lumen strips flickering in patterns that seemed like coded signals from some intelligence not yet aligned with our universe. The Mechanicus priests moved through the corridors in synchronized formation, their red robes floating behind them like trails of blood, chanting the canticles of convergence, half prayer, half algorithm, each syllable resonating with a vibration that rattled the fillings in my teeth. Even the ship's machine spirit seemed different, more aware, as if the Convergence Lumen had awakened something inside its steel heart. The fleet surrounding us was colossal. 3 battleships, 7 cruisers, 24 escorts, a pair of black ships for psychic stabilization, and an entire regiment of Tempestus Scions armed with prototype reality stabilizers strapped to their backs like illuminated coffins. The Custodians contingent, 15 silent golden demigods, walked the decks as if preparing for the Emperor's own judgment to manifest in hostile form. And perhaps it would, for the Inquisitor gathered the senior officers and key personnel, including me, inside the Strategium, where a shimmering tear-shaped construct floated above the hololithic dais, a simulated breach. Projected from the Convergence Lumen's core, wobbling like a phosphorescent droplet caught between gravity wells. With every passing hour, the construct brightened, its surface rippling with colors that should not exist, hues that seemed to seep into the edges of my vision like after-images of nightmares. And as the Archmagos explained the device's function, I felt a heaviness forming in my chest, a constriction, as though the ship itself were inhaling and we were trapped inside its lungs. To reopen the incision, the Archmagos droned, we must mirror the resonance that struck us, not replicate it, not force it, reflect it, a perfect inversion. His mechadendrites tapped the hololithic surface, sending ripples across the construct. Through reflection, we create a fold. Through the fold, we create a path. His voice lowered. Through the path, we create contact. That last word struck the room like a bell. Contact. It meant we would not be observing the multiverse. We would be stepping into it. The Lord Admiral issued fleet-wide commands. Battle stations. Psychic dampeners active. Experimental stabilizers to maximum. The Convergence Lumen began to spool, its core whining like a tortured star, and I felt the air thicken with warp resonance, the hairs on my arms rising as if lightning were dancing just beneath my skin. The Inquisitor turned to me, her eyes hollow with sleepless determination. "You will document everything," she whispered. "If we return, your record will be the only barrier against ignorance. If we do not return," she paused, glancing toward the trembling construct, "then perhaps some other version of you will read what we leave behind." The moment the device activated is etched into my mind like a scar. The sound was not a sound at all. It was the absence of sound. A silence so total it felt like the universe exhaled and then refused to breathe again. The decks vibrated with a low thrumming pulse. The lumen strips dimmed into an amber haze and the hololithic tear blossomed into a real one. A sliver of impossible space, thin as a whisper, cutting through the Strategium like a blade. My vision warped, bending around the fracture. Every surface stretched and snapped like reflections in rippling water. Psychers aboard the black ships screamed in unison. The Geller field surged, nearly overloading. The tear widened, slowly, agonizingly, revealing something beyond. But the image flickered chaotically, like trying to peer through a broken screen. I saw mountains, no, metal spires, no, a fleet, no, a colossal human face split across shifting planes of mirrored existence. Reality flickered, collapsing possibilities into unstable fragments. The Inquisitor barked for stabilization. The Mechanicus chanted louder, their voices merging into a single metallic wail. And then, the tear stabilized. A clean, sharp wound. A window, a doorway. Through it I saw a dark void. Not our void. A deeper one. A void where stars pulsed like dying embers. And across that emptiness drifted a structure so colossal it took my brain several seconds to understand what I was seeing. A fortress monastery hanging in the abyss like a moon of iron and sorrow. Its spires mirrored countless times across thin layers of overlapping universes, as if existing simultaneously in multiple realities and failing to fully align with any of them. It was a cathedral of infinite reflections, broken, drifting, dead. The Vox crackled. "Contact established," the comms officer whispered. "Dimensional bleed level stable." The Inquisitor raised her chin. "Advance." The fleet surged forward, engines screaming against the resistance of laws they were never meant to break. Passing through the tear was like drowning in a river of broken memories. Shadows brushing against my skin, voices whispering fragments of futures and pasts not my own. Visions of myself dying, living, fighting, begging, fleeing. I saw the tabula obscura burning. I saw Terra split like a fruit. I saw an emperor made of shadow. I saw a universe where humanity had never existed. Then the vision snapped away and we emerged into the dark. Scanners overloaded. Auspex readings fluctuated. The fortress monastery drifted before us, illuminated only by the dying glow of a distant red star smeared across the horizon of this alien universe. "Identify!" the Lord Admiral demanded. But the Vox returned nothing. No life signatures, no power emissions, no warp presence. "It is abandoned," the Magos muttered. "Or," the Inquisitor finished the sentence, "or it is hiding." A cold dread pooled in my stomach. The Custodes tensed, hands gripping guardian spears. Then a flicker, a faint pulse of light from one of the monastery's shattered windows. A signal, a beacon, a message, one we recognized instantly. 6 words, the same 6 words. "Do not open the gate." We failed, but the voice this time, it wasn't mine. It wasn't human. It was distorted, hollow, as if spoken through a throat filled with ash. And behind that voice I heard something else. Breathing, heavy, hunger-filled, waiting. The first boarding party was composed of Custodes, Tempestus Scions, a triad of Magos explorators, 2 sanctioned psychers, and, by the Inquisitor's direct command, me. I remember standing in the embarkation bay of the Eternum Vigil, staring into the open maw of the Storm Raven shuttle that would ferry us into the drifting fortress monastery. The air thick with the ozone scent of charged stabilizer coils, the deck vibrating under our boots as the convergence lumen worked tirelessly to keep the breach open behind us, its constant droning hum merging with the dull bass of my pulse. The Custodes stood at the shuttle's entrance like golden executioners carved from statues of forgotten gods, their mirrored visors reflecting fragmented versions of us, thinner, distorted, as though the very light in this universe resisted forming coherent images. As the Scions filed into position, their stabilizer packs humming like caged thunder, I realized how wrong the gravity felt here, slightly too soft, as if the universe itself lacked the conviction to pull us downward with proper force. The psychers muttered nervously, clutching their warding totems. Even without their warnings, I could feel it. This place was not dead. It was not abandoned. It was asleep, or pretending to be. The shuttle's engines flared, coughing out shimmering trails of dimensional residue, and we launched toward the monastery's drifting silhouette. Through the cracked viewport, I watched its colossal form approach, its hull pitted and scarred by weapons I did not recognize. Its spires twisted as if bent by titanic hands, its stained glass windows shattered but still faintly glowing with residual luminescence. The fading echoes of prayers that no longer belonged to any living congregation. As we drew closer, details sharpened. Statues of saints were melted into grotesque caricatures of their original form. Liturgical inscriptions were warped, the letters reconfigured into symbols resembling Imperial Gothic but stretched into impossible geometries, as though written by someone who remembered the language imperfectly. A vast mural depicting the Emperor towered over the hangar entrance, but the Emperor's face was missing, peeled clean off the stone as though erased by a careful, precise hand. The shuttle set down with a bone-shaking thud, and the hangar's interior lights flickered in delayed reaction, illuminating the drifting fog of particulate matter. The Custodians were first to step out, weapons held at the ready, their presence radiating a sacred finality that calmed the air, even here, in a universe gone wrong. The Scions followed, boots clanking in sharp precision. When my turn came, I hesitated on the shuttle ramp, staring into the cavernous gloom, feeling a sensation like fingertips of cold air brushing at the base of my skull. Something was watching us. Not from the shadows, no. From the walls themselves. From the stone. From the broken lights. From everywhere. The Inquisitor stepped beside me, her voice low. "Record everything," she whispered, then marched ahead. We advanced through the hangar in tight formation, lights slicing through the murk. Debris floated in the weakened gravity, fragments of ceramite, broken purity seals drifting like withered petals, and a single helmet that spun slowly as we passed, a helmet shaped for an Astartes, but the inside was melted smooth, as if his head had dissolved rather than burned. One of the psychers gasped. "This place, it remembers us," she whispered. "It echoes us." I didn't understand until we reached the far wall, where a set of reinforced blast doors loomed. The scorch marks on them were identical to marks I had seen on doors aboard our own ship. Same pattern, same spread, same angles of impact, as if whatever had attacked here had mirrored an event from our reality or vice versa. The Mechanicus inspected the door, and after a brief nod, the Custodians tore it open with their bare hands. The corridor beyond was a cathedral of ruin, vaulted ceilings fractured, arches collapsing inward, incense burners lying cracked upon the floor, their last embers still releasing faint tendrils of smoke that coiled upward like dying prayers. The further we went, the colder the air grew. Not physically cold, but emotionally cold, as though the monastery carried an echo of immense sorrow compressed into every stone. At several points, the psychers flinched, clutching their temples as whispers seeped into their minds. Even those of us without psychic sensitivity felt impressions, faint, fleeting images. I saw myself walking this corridor before. I saw the Inquisitor behind me, injured. I saw a Custodian kneeling in defeat. But none of these things had happened. Not yet, not here. Not in our universe. We descended deeper into the monastery until we reached what appeared to be a vast sanctum, its ceiling supported by massive pillars emblazoned with sigils of the Imperial truth. Except the sigils had been crossed out and replaced with jagged lines, as though someone had tried to rewrite doctrine using desperation as ink. The central dais was broken. A great lectern lay toppled, and upon the steps leading up to it we found the first body. A human, or something that had once been human. It wore a tattered inquisitorial rosette still pinned to its cloak, though its flesh had thinned to parchment, its face drawn into a silent scream, its eye sockets hollow and blackened. The Inquisitor knelt, examining the corpse without touching it. "What killed him?" she murmured. The psycher's voice trembled. "Reflection collapse," she whispered. He lost coherence. His reality unraveled. A chill ran through me as I imagined dying in such a way, not torn apart by battle or consumed by the warp, but erased, unmade, unthreaded from the tapestry of existence itself. The Archmagos approached, scanning the scene with arrays of floating optic lenses. "Dimensional instability," he muttered. "This universe is degrading. It may be collapsing under its own divergence." Before we could digest that grim assessment, one of the Scions called out from across the sanctum, "Sign of movement." We rushed over, weapons ready, only to find a towering statue of Saint Elenius Pius cracked down the middle. At first it seemed ordinary damage, until the crack widened with a slow, groaning shift, and the statue's halves peeled apart to reveal a cavity within. Inside it was a shrine, not of devotion, of warning. Dozens of data slates, purity seals, and bone fragments arranged in careful ritualistic order. And at the center, a single functioning Vox recorder. The Inquisitor lifted it. Her jaw tightened. Then she pressed play. My own voice emerged. Not the warped echo we had heard before, not the distorted ash-filled whisper, but my own voice, clear, terrified, breaking. "If you are hearing this," the recording me said, breath ragged, "then you followed us. Emperor help you. We thought the enemy was out there, in the multiverse, in the breach. But we were wrong. A pause. A trembling inhale. The threat isn't what lies beyond the gate. The threat is what the gate changes inside us. Static. A muffled scream. Do not trust yourselves, the voice pleaded. Do not trust your ship. Do not trust your memories. This universe died because I... The recording cut off in a burst of distortion. Then silence. The Inquisitor stared at the device as though it had bitten her. We leave, she said. Now. But as we turned to retreat, the lumen strips flickered. The walls trembled. Deep within the monastery, something began to move, heavy and slow, as if awakening after a long slumber. And for the first time since entering this universe, the Custodians raised their weapons in genuine fear. I felt the weight of the Emperor's silence long before the assault began. A silence so total it seemed to stretch across the multiverse itself, an oppressive stillness that settled into the seams of my armor like settling dust. And as I stood upon the fractured battlements of a reality not my own, a place where the sky shifted between colors no human eye was ever meant to understand, I realized that every universe the Imperium touched carried the same quiet, the calm before an extinction-level storm unleashed in the Emperor's name. And I wondered if this was what damnation truly felt like. Not fire, not torment, but inevitability. A slow, crushing sense that everything ahead was predetermined by a will far greater than your own. The planet we fought upon was called Elindris by its inhabitants, a world belonging to a multiverse where magic shaped the laws of physics and where entire continents floated on crystalline tides of arcane force. Its inhabitants were nothing like the psychers of our galaxy, for their power was not stolen from a warp god, nor bargained through madness, but born from the world itself like sap from a tree. And for that very reason, the Imperium had marked them for annihilation. Their existence challenged the dogma of Holy Terra. Their nature implied that the warp was not the only source of the immaterial. Their stories whispered of planes untouched by chaos. And so, from the moment these truths were discovered, the High Lords declared them heretical realities, warp-independent anomalies, and unleashed the Divine Convergence battle fleet, the most fanatically loyal cluster of crusaders drawn from dozens of segmenta, each sworn to eradicate every cosmological contradiction to the Imperial Creed. As the fleet descended, the sky cracked open like stained glass under a hammer, and the voices of their population rose in chants of ancient spellwork, forming shimmering wards of luminous script that spiraled upward like glowing serpents. But the Imperium had brought something far more terrifying than sorcery, a dimensional null field array. A device forged in secret by the Adeptus Mechanicus with forbidden technology reverse-engineered from Xeno artifacts, capable of erasing metaphysical structures as easily as fire consumes parchment, and it hummed now with a deep bone-shaking growl, the color draining from the world as it activated. I could taste iron on my tongue as the planet's magic screamed, its natural laws unraveling in fluttering sparks that drifted away like dying insects. And I stood helpless and horrified as an entire civilization's lifeblood was drained before my eyes. The Elindrians fought with everything they had. Mages who conjured storms of incandescent frost, warriors who transformed their bodies into crystalline giants, scholars who rewrote physical laws mid-combat, but every spell cast withered upon leaving their hands. Every ritual collapsed halfway through completion, and every creature born of magic cracked apart like brittle stone as the null field ate their reality alive. I tried to imagine how many cultures, how many histories, how many dreams were collapsing at that very moment, and for the first time since this campaign began, I questioned the Crusade's purpose. Not openly, never openly, but deep within the quiet crevices of my mind where the Emperor could not hear, or perhaps chose not to. I wondered if humanity's fear of the unknown had become a weapon more devastating than any plasma cannon, if the Imperium had mistaken control for survival, and if we now destroyed not threats but possibilities. The Elindrians' final stand was made at the Shard Spire, a colossal tower of shimmering blue crystal that served as both palace and ley line nexus. And as we breached its radiant gates, I saw their last archmage kneeling at the tower's center, crying blood as she attempted to shield her world's heart from unraveling. But the null field cracked the tower like a frozen lake beneath heavy boots, sending shards of glowing mana tumbling upward into a sky rapidly fading into monochrome. She looked at me as the world died, really looked, her eyes burning with a fury older than the Imperium itself, and through trembling lips, she whispered that her people had seen countless worlds, countless futures, and only one was truly doomed: ours. She claimed humanity had become a paradox, a species both victim and perpetrator, consumed by a self-sustaining cycle of war against everything unfamiliar, until eventually nothing unfamiliar would remain, and humanity would drown in the emptiness it had created. I wanted to deny her. I wanted to strike her down and silence her with the righteousness expected of an Imperial soldier. Instead, I hesitated, even as the shard spire exploded in a shockwave of colorless light that left nothing but ash and drifting motes of crystallized memory. When the null field collapsed at last, the world was already dead, stripped of magic, stripped of identity, stripped of meaning, and the battle fleet logged it as another successful purification. But I could not shake the Archmage's final words, and as we withdrew into orbit, preparing for transition to the next doomed multiversal branch, something inside me twisted and refused to untwist. For a moment I thought I heard the Emperor's voice, not as thunder nor command, but as something tremulous, distant, almost questioning, as though he himself wondered what he had unleashed upon the infinite expanse of existence. Or perhaps it was only my conscience cracking beneath the weight of what we had done. The difference was becoming harder to distinguish. I knew the war had reached its final, irreversible turning point the moment the fleet translated into the interstice, a region of the multiverse so ancient, so impossibly vast that even the navigator houses spoke of it with trembling voices, describing it not as a place but as a wound where universes bled into one another like veins ruptured beneath cracked skin. And as our ships drifted through the shimmering lattice of fractured dimensions, I felt as though we were insects crawling along the bones of a dead god, fragile, insignificant, and yet somehow entrusted with a mission too monumental for any mortal mind to comprehend. The interstice was not empty. It was filled with echoes of realities long extinguished, ghost universes flickering like dying embers, each one a grave marker for a cosmology that had already collapsed. And I found myself staring into these silent, dissolving worlds with a sensation that clawed into my ribs, a nauseating understanding that we were becoming indistinguishable from the forces that had erased them. The High Lords had called this the Convergence Offensive, but aboard the ships the soldiers had another whispered term: the End Crusade, the moment when the Imperium stopped expanding and began devouring anything beyond the boundaries of its understanding, feeding on the multiverse like a starving beast cornered by its own paranoia. Our orders were clear: identify the central locus of multiversal convergence, purge any sentient entities residing there, and secure the Nexus Gate, an ancient structure rumored to tie every universe together like threads of a tapestry. But what the briefing omitted was that the Nexus Gate was older than the warp, older than humanity, older even than the Emperor himself, a relic from a time before the laws of physics had finished being written, before chaos had learned to speak, before reality had learned to harden. When we reached it, drifting above a titanic cruciform monument of black stone suspended between universes, reality around us rippled like a disturbed pond. The gate pulsed with a heartbeat so slow, so heavy, that it echoed through our hulls, through our armor, and into our bones. The Mechanicus aboard the command ship fell to their knees as one, chanting Binharic hymns in static-choked ecstasy, proclaiming that the structure predated the Omnissiah and must therefore be reclaimed in his name, while the commissars barked orders to maintain formation, as if shouting into a storm that did not care. The closer we drew, the more the multiverse resisted our presence. Space folded, time jittered like a faulty cogitator, and the warp itself recoiled from the gate's aura, retreating like a wounded predator. I felt an overwhelming pressure inside my skull, a sense that someone or something was peeling back the layers of my mind, reading every memory I had ever buried, my doubts, my guilt from Melindris, my fear that the Imperium had become not a shield of humanity but a bludgeon swinging blindly in the dark. And then the gate spoke, not in words, but in a resonance that vibrated through every molecule of my being, and what I understood in that moment nearly drove me to madness. The Imperium was not the first to attempt dominion over the multiverse, nor the second, nor the 10th. Countless civilizations across countless eons had made the same mistake, approaching the gate with conquest in their hearts, only to be erased from the multiverse's memory when they tried to claim something meant to bind existence together. Every attempt to weaponize it had triggered a collapse. Every collapse reset the chain of universes. And humanity, in its hubris, was now poised to repeat the cycle. I tried to communicate this revelation to my superiors, but all I received were threats of discipline and hollow promises that faith would guide us through. The Imperial Creed had no room for cosmic humility. The Lord Admiral ordered the deployment of the Null Genesis warheads, the Imperium's most forbidden weapons, capable of rewriting physical laws within a targeted radius. And as the launch bays opened, I felt a pit in my stomach colder than void exposure. We fired 3 warheads directly into the heart of the Nexus gate. The explosion wasn't light or fire or sound. It was absence. A sudden erasure of color, heat, time, and logic. A shockwave that expanded in perfect silence as the gate's structure began to crack like a planet struck by an orbital bombardment. The multiverse trembled. Universes flickered. Thousands of realities folded in on themselves like paper soaked in oil. The fleet was thrown into chaos as half our ships were torn apart by gravitational spasms, their hulls bending like molten wax. Astropaths screamed as their minds ruptured. Navigators' third eyes burst in fountains of warp smoke. And still the warheads dug into the gate, tearing through its foundations, unraveling the very concept of connection that held the multiverse together. I tried to flee. I admit it now. I tried to escape in a drop shuttle, hoping to reach a stable dimensional seam before the collapse consumed us. But the interstice twisted around the shuttle like a fist closing around a bug. Time folded. Space screamed, and then everything stopped. A stillness deeper than the void settled across existence. The gate hung frozen, its cracks glowing like veins of molten starfire. The multiverse shimmered like a dying flame, and in that brittle silence I heard a voice, not the Emperor's, not a demon's, but something older, sadder, a voice that carried the weight of universes upon universes. You were not meant to reach this far. And suddenly I understood the truth that no imperial doctrine would ever admit. Humanity was not the inevitable conqueror of the multiverse. It was the multiverse's most dangerous aberration. Our existence destabilized everything. Our wars rippled across dimensions like shockwaves. Our expansion was not a destiny but a cosmic infection. And by attacking the Nexus Gate, we had triggered a chain reaction that not even the Emperor could stop. But the voice was not wrathful. It was mournful, as though lamenting that it must now undo us to preserve everything else. Reality began to collapse inward as the gate prepared to reset the multiversal cycle. And in that final moment, suspended between existence and oblivion, I felt something unexpected, a soft, almost human regret. As the voice whispered, "Another cycle ends. Pray that the next remembers mercy."